Hey, Simon.
Jim, how are you? I didn't have my microphone on. How are you?
I am pretty good. Pretty good. We're going to be talking about something that is really exciting today. And I was trying to think about a good intro or joke about agents for today's episode. I was thinking of things like James Bond, famous 007 agent. But truth be told, I just couldn't come up with anything funny. So Um, and my OpenClaw agent also couldn't come up with anything funny. So we're just going to jump right into it today.
Okay. I was gonna
And
say LLM, like that is one of those interesting things about LLMs is that they are not very funny. And I don't know why. That's such an innate human function, I guess. But yeah, well, let's dive on in. Let's I don't know, agents of change, something like that.
yes, agents of
Yeah,
change. Yes.
indeed.
And I don't think our guest today is a secret agent, but he does know a lot about agents. So today we're joined by Dr. Luca Fiaschi. Luca is currently a partner at PyMC Labs, where he leads the Gen AI vertical, helping Fortune 500 companies deploy LLM-powered systems, and drives research and development initiatives on LLM uncertainty, synthetic consumers, and agent-based simulations. Before PyMC Labs, he was a chief data and AI officer at Misplay, VP of data science at Stitch Fix, VP of data and machine learning at HelloFresh, just to name a few. He has his PhD in AI, computer vision, and machine learning from Heidelberg University. And when he's not behind the keyboard telling his agents how Beijing MMM works, he has been known to go skydiving and, I believe, race motorcycles. Welcome to the show, Luca.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Yeah. And did I get that right? Do you actually race motorcycles, or do you just...
I do. Actually, this is it's me racing a motorbike. So this was one of the first, actually, LLMs techniques were invented, if you remember, a few years ago for neural style transfer, where you could take something like a Picasso style and then apply to a picture. And so this is actually like a photo of me on a motorbike, and then my wife used that technique to enhance it and become this like art. So,
all right, this is a first for the Measure Up podcast. Our first time having a motorcycle racer on the show, so that's good. What's more exciting, zipping down the highway at like 150 miles an hour on two wheels, or programming agentic marketing mix modeling?
well, they are both very exciting, I would say. They have a different threshold of risk inherently, but they're both like very exciting things to do. Actually, I think because I spent so much time sitting and thinking about problems and engineering and strategies and technical stuff, I need to disconnect. And then I need to do some interesting sports to rebalance, and so that's how my brain works, I guess.
Yeah, that will definitely do it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that is well, high risk, but also I guess you're talking about risk thresholds there, and as we think about, I look, I think there's always been this idea in the broader advertising world that there's almost like a Turing test associated with this idea of, look, if an agent can actually build and interpret an MMM, that is this moment of we'll call it agentic measurement, and maybe it's a good place to start, just to be, what is agentic MMM? What does that mean to you? And how are others defining it, if it's any different from the way you're thinking about it?
Yeah, very good. As you know, like measurement has a long history, like in marketing, and MMMs has become one of the primary measurement frameworks adopted by many companies for many different reasons, including like cookie deprecations and so on and so forth. And so this idea is that they were always very hard to build as models because of all the problems we have with marketing data, and they are very hard to put in practice. And so although they're like, I read that these surveys from e-marketeers, very recent, a couple of months ago, came out and says that 62% of all advertisers are using MMMs. And I believe 90% are working on it. Still, like, companies find it very hard to use them in their day-to-day practice. And our core belief at PyMC Labs is real problem is the language barrier between the people who built these MMMs and the people who are actually using. And if you can solve that language barrier, and LLMs are a universal translator, so they can solve actually that problem, you could actually use ways of more sophisticated analytics in your day-to-day decision making, capturing a lot of value for every company. And so agentic data science, to come back to your question, is our solution to combine advanced analytics and to empower stakeholders with advanced analytics. And agentic MMM, it's a way to connect very sophisticated models with an interface that make it very, very easy to use for everyone.
Okay, so it's really focused on the model piece. So one of the things I think about a lot is how much time, effort, and energy goes into the precursors with MMM as we think about data cleaning, or even you just saying the data's so messy and maybe different places. Is that like, I guess maybe walk us through how you're thinking about the various components of developing MMM and how you're seeing the agentic functions applied to each of them.
Yes, very good point. So I do think that there are two stakeholders in the mix of building and using an MMM. And these two stakeholders are the data scientists that creates them, and then these stakeholders that use them for like the budget allocation process. And they have different needs, and agentic AI can play in both of areas. And when I think about an end-to-end MMM solution from the build stage to the actual usage stage, there are different components that needs to line up to make this real and possible. And agentic AI can play a role in each one of them. So from the data consolidation process, for example, you can have agents that smartly merge the data and do the data validation steps, to agents that intelligently build the model and incorporate priors and business knowledge into the way these models are built. And then on the second step, once you deploy these models, once they are used, retrained on an actual pipeline, you want to have agents that can help you translate the outcome of the models to the stakeholders in a way that they can understand, and allow the stakeholders to ask follow-up questions. And the follow-up questions are often what really is one of the biggest challenge to solve in business settings, because it may happen that the stakeholders, by the virtue of the interactive process of developing a business, they may want to ask 3, 4, 5 different scenarios, and then they come up and say, "Hey, but what happens if you change this variable again?" And nowadays, this is taken care from data scientists, but really you want an agent to be able to do that. So across the entire chains, this does two things. One, it elevates the work of data scientists to be a little bit higher level. So the data scientist is not anymore the person who codes the model, but it's the person who lines up the right agents in the correct way so that they can produce a model that then addresses the problem of the stakeholder. It is not the person that addresses the questions of the stakeholders anymore, but it's the person who builds the model and deploy the model in a way that can be done effectively. And then, of course, it has, again, obvious advantages in terms of speed for the stakeholder downstream.
So this may be getting ahead of where we're at right now, but I have the question that just pops into my mind and I can't quiet it down is, at what point do we no longer need a data scientist? Are the agents going to be good enough where the CMO, the head of marketing, is just working with the agents directly? Or do you see there's always going to be a place for a knowledgeable data scientist with domain knowledge of the business to be working with the models and the agents themselves, and then kind of being that in-between layer?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it goes, I think, really like at the core essence of what the transformations we're going to see in the next year, they're going to play out. I do think that generally, I do think that there are going to be only two things that distinguish us humans from AI in the future. And these two things are intent and taste. And so intent to tell the agents what they should be working on, that's a human judgment like capability. And so we are going to be able to line them up to solve concrete problems and telling them what concrete problems, even at high levels, what general objectives they should think about, rather than, the fine grain downstream, like this is the task component of the problem you need to solve. But that's a human thing. And then the other one is taste and judgment. So is this really correct? Is the agent missing something that's fundamentally important? Or is the agent output just low? So that's the two things that the data scientists are going to be doing. And then generally, I do think that to deploy these systems with that translating practice, that's going to be still data scientists needed across the organizations. If you want, they can plays out in a way that's going to hopefully, and that's my belief, increase the demand for data scientists, because businesses that nowadays they can't afford to hire data scientists anymore, they maybe going to become more efficient, and the data scientists will be able to operate not just across the marketing domains, but across marketing and finance and supply chain operations, being able to focus themselves on capturing more and more value across the organization. And so one of the things that we used to say 2 to 3 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, was that the data scientist was the sexiest job of the 21st century. Well, it hasn't maintained its promise yet. And there is a series of reasons why that's the case. But the reality is that data science techniques are not yet used by our organizations in the way they should be. And it's really a hard problem still. And maybe AI has a shot at being that solutions and maintain that promise in the longer term. So that's my core belief.
It's interesting. Sorry, Jim. Just the one note there when you're talking about taste, because I think I've been thinking a lot about taste and sort of I don't know, the opinionated nature of MMM at times. And I was reading a paper recently about being able to for agents to be able to generate taste, or to be able to develop taste in the scientific sense. And they were talking about reinforcement learning through community feedback. Is that when we talk about these roles, like I guess I'm wondering, does that mean though that it would be the data scientists that perhaps that are working at PyMC, they'll be the ones who are providing the core community feedback, and it'll be calibrated by what they're hearing from essentially just, do you have confidence to invest these dollars or not? And do you have confidence in the outputs of these models? Versus having in-house data scientists in that regard, because to Jim's point, it sounds like we're maybe close to that chasm, or crossing the chasm of the vibe measurement moment, where it would just be, look, the model is going to be calibrated in the systems and the agents here, but at the end of the day, you don't need a high degree of data scientific rigor in order to actually develop, or in order to actually use a model or apply it to your business. Or am I off base?
You're not. I do think it's going to be very subtle here, the difference. Of course, we are embedding a lot of knowledge into these agents in the first place. And, ways of we're doing that is by codifying this knowledge into skills. And these skills are opinionated ways of using specific techniques and libraries that, in our experience at PyMC Labs, allows you to get the best outcome for your business. But, and so one way of arguing is that, well, maybe the ability to deploy these agents in the enterprise is going to be democratized, and a lot of people, they're going to be able to do that. On the other hand, though, there will be, I think, still a need for like a validation of the end-to-end agents process once it's there. And the agents is going to build checks and balances internally, but there is so many, let's say, nuances to a specific business that at least once you set it up for the very first time and for a few times, there is a very high degree of customizations and judgments and review that needs to happen in these agents pipelines to make sure that it is correct and effective and so on. And you can think about these also being a factor of the increasing level of sophistications and demand that it's going to happen as a result of being able to deploy these agents for building MMMs at a larger scale. So what's going to happen, I believe, is that probably we're going to solve the simplest cases of MMMs. So if you are in e-commerce, all digital channels, and you want to, without having to implement many lift tests, you want to deploy like a kind of what we call a vanilla MMM. Probably the agents will bring you 95% there already. But then there is a component of, hey, you want to start incorporating like lift tests results. And so you want to build an experimentation program around the results of the MMM. And that program, well, the agents can help you design it and it can even help you implement it, but you need to put some judgment into the way it's structured. And then the other one will be, maybe you want to measure like more sophisticated effects. And so referrals, for example, on top of the standard MMMs. And so you're going to keep asking more and more sophisticated questions that the current agents maybe not be able to tackle. And then you're going to need to build more complex agents pipeline on top of what you actually have. And somebody will need to validate those. And so I think it's going to be a shifting target, and there's going to be always the need for data scientists to be in that field as humans that have judgments, intent, and taste, and can really assess what's needed, why is it needed, and is this ultimately correct for the business.
Yeah, the thing that I agree with all of that. I keep going back and forth and thinking like, agents and LLMs will never be able to do all of what we do. We'll still be needed, and maybe that's just the human of me trying to justify my own existence. But I also have another side of me that thinks, yeah, eventually they'll just be able to do everything that I'm doing right now and 1,000 times better. But coming back to the maybe some of the more like the specifics of the agents themselves, are we talking about just like, we have a model and then we're chatting with ChatGPT, or you mentioned skills? I know, maybe let's hone in on that, because like that's maybe a big part of the agent is like we have to give them skills that tell them knowledge about our business, knowledge about how MMMs work and how to build them, docs about how PyMC marketing works and things like that. So I know PyMC Labs had done some research recently around just using like Claude Code, plain vanilla Claude Code by itself, and trying to build MMMs with that versus Claude Code skills. Maybe talk a little bit about the benefit that you get from there once you start going, beyond just I'm chatting with a Claude Code versus, okay, I'm giving it skills, I'm giving it knowledge, I'm giving it context. What were the findings that you got from that?
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe before you go into that question, I think it's helpful to kind of like explain like very high level what's a standard LLM, what's an agent,
Perfect.
and how what capabilities really enable an agent. I do think that there are many different definitions, and in fact, it's a running joke that nobody knows what an agent is and everything is an agent. But I think that at the core of it is the agent is an LLM with the ability to interact with the environment and like remember things. And so reason about things and remember things. And so if you accept this definition, a standard API calls an LLM, it's not an agent. To have an agent, you need to give the ability to do something with that LLM calls. So the LLM needs to be able to call some tools, and the LLM needs to be remember like what he has done. So collect the results of these actions from the environment and remember what he has done. So Claude Code is an agent because it can write code, can run code, and can get feedback of running code, and incorporate these to modify. It remembers it and modify its behavior. And so Claude Code is a very powerful agent. In fact, if you ask Cloud Code to build code for like a lot of different coding tasks, including data science tasks, building models, it's gonna give you code that perfectly runs. Maybe not at the first try. So the first try is gonna find a bug here and there, but what's gonna happen is it's gonna report back very quickly. It's gonna learn from a mistake, look at the error, iterate, and gives you back something that's code that's running. And so in this case, I'd say that codes where you have a verifiable domain and output, like coding tasks, they can be solved by agents today very effectively, and by coding agents very effectively. Now you get to data science, you are in a domain that's less verifiable. And the reason why, especially for causal inference solutions, the reason is because you have problems which have degenerate solutions. Let's say in MMM, you can have 10 models, they fit perfectly your data, but they have different, they correspond to different ways of understanding the world and reality, depending on their configurations. And one of that is maybe the one you want to prefer over the others for many different reasons, including business logic. And on the other side, there is an exponential number of choices you need to make during a typical data science process. And so people call it the tree of forking paths. You decide to pre-process your data in a certain way that has a cascade on the way you build the models later on that are on top of the data. On the modeling side, you have different ways of structuring your model. And so it's an infinite amount of possibility. And because there is no strong guiding principle on this possibility a priori, when you start the modeling process, unless you have some best practices and knowledge you want to inject, you can end up anywhere. In fact, Cloud Code has probably read any possible book in statistics, and it's going to try and land in some solutions of the space, and that is actually perfectly reasonable in a way. Is it the best one? According to best practices that you know, they need to be true? Probably not. And skills, it's a way of helping Cloud Code to select out of these solutions the ones that you think is going to be the best. And I can give you a concrete examples of something like this. So we had measured, one way of measuring this is to give the LLMs, the agent coding, the task of coding specific well-known Bayesian models, for example, for stochastic price volatility. And what happens is that in almost, let's say, 100% of the cases, Cloud Code is going to produce code that actually runs and delivers any inference. Now, when you go and analyze that inference, you will find out that the model has a fit, but the fit is incorrect because some of the parameters are actually underestimated because of like really numerical subtleties. And the reason why it does that is because he has used a version of the library to write that models that actually was an old version of the library, or it has used a way of parameterizing the model that's not the most effective way of reparameterizing the model. So the model that comes out is complete garbage. In fact, when you start evaluating the correctness of the model downstream as a criteria, you will find out that with and without, or with versus without skills, the pass rate tremendously increase from something that's close to 0% to something that's close to 70% on something of the hardest problems. And the reason why it does that is that the skill doesn't really teach the agent how to reason, but it tells the agents, hey, if there are 5 different ways of writing these models, well, the most appropriate one for these classes of problems is the number 4th, and this is the reason why. And so it biases the models to follow one of path specifically in this like forking world of choices.
So in essence, you're basically giving it skills files that say, here's how here's all of our knowledge about how to build models from years and years and years of experience, and this is the preferential way to do it. If you come across this situation, try this parameter setting, or if you know, if you're going to build it with this model, use this version, things like that. Do you find that that it always adheres to those skills, or does it sometimes ignore them?
It does ignore it a lot, and then you come back to another problem. The skills is not enough,
right?
And you need to have hard checks. And so because the agents, so they're becoming way better at following instructions. And in fact, they can hold way more context, and you can add longer skill files. And people is already working on models that are 100 millions context windows. So you will be able to hold like a lot of instructions into the agent, but it's still a probabilistic model. So sometimes they choose not to follow the prescription of the skill. And so how you get around that is this ability of the agents to interact with the environment, not to just give you the output of a prompt. And so in the environments, you can do anything you want. You can set hard checks on the output of the models to ensure that certain constraints are actually respected. A simple example from Bayesian modeling is to say, hey, check a quantity which is called the R hat. They are a quantity that it's derived from Bayesian models, and it's statistical quantity that tells you whether the model has a good enough fit or not. And instead of telling the agents to verify this property, you can just add it to a callback to every model that it creates by adding it as a deterministic script on top of the code base. And so this is a check that needs to always happen. Don't tell the agent to do it. You tell a deterministic script to do it as a hook and a callback. And so that ensures that you set guardrails for the agents to always follow certain things. And the feedback you give from this deterministic script and guardrails is taken into account from the agents, but then says, hey, wait a minute. Here I'm following the best practice, but hey, the result doesn't look good according to this feedback I get from the environment. Let me change my behavior and pivot in a different direction. So that's what really distinguishes an agent from a simple LLM call.
So this is interesting. This just like kind of blew my mind a little bit and opened it up. And the sense that like, I'm thinking of like, okay, I have an agent and I'm instructing it and I'm saying, okay, here's your skills file. Now build this MMM. Here's the data. Here's some context about the business. Now go build the MMM. And it comes back and I look at it and like, and then I respond to it. I'm the person like at the keyboard responding to it saying, no, the R hat's way too high. Try again. But what you're saying is like, no, that's just all a program that you've written, a script that's
correct.
That check given back. Okay. That's amazing.
And that's what I meant exactly. You bring it up again. That's what I meant exactly with the role of the data scientist. The role of the data scientist is kind of designing this dance between the model and the environment, so that these dance end up in the right spot, rather than doing the implementation and dancing together with the model.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's so many interesting pieces of this. I guess I'm still trying to reckon with the realities of the time to value piece here. Do you see that massively diminishing? And I'm just trying to, I don't know, from a business stakeholder point of view, they look at this and go, cool, you've added more, frankly, maybe even more cost into this moment in time because we're using all these tokens to do all these things. Is it going to provide me with a better, more confident output? Is it going to be faster? Like what are the real value props that you see associated with using agents throughout this journey, knowing that you are probably increasing the degree of risk that you're introducing into these systems?
Yeah, it's a very good question, especially nowadays where, like Anthropics and probably it was going to follow up, other companies are trying to rise the price of the tokens. And you used to say that tokens used to be a cheap commodity. We have seen that for a long time, actually, for a couple of years. The cost of tokens have gone down.
Yeah, it's one of my greatest fears is that we all build all these incredible solutions and they use massive amounts of tokens, and then the price of tokens quadruples overnight, and you go, okay. And it's like, you invent the car and then gas is now $1,000 a gallon. You're like, why do I have a car? What
It's
am I
like
going to do now?
yeah, it's like the drug dealer's like, here, first one's free.
Yeah, exactly. It is,
$3.
and the system is heavily subsidized.
Yeah.
We know it is. That's a real challenge.
Yeah. It is also like let's say a consideration that company needs to take into account in the longer term, very much, which hasn't been primary until very recently. I do think that a possible solution to that, not as the ultimate solution, is think about in terms of like sovereign AI and the ability to deploy your own LLMs internally rather than only rely on vendors and have absolute lock-in. Generally, it is very complicated. So the question of whether you build or you buy something and you expose yourself to increasing price later on, it's always a very tricky question for companies, and there is no right and wrong. There is a lot of considerations. Now, what I do think is that generally speaking, if you free up one of your data scientists that was only dedicated to build MMM, say you are companies with, let's say, like hundreds of business lines, like Colgate Palmolive, dozens and dozens of countries, complicating pricing structures or interactions across the different product lines. You have very complicated media mix models to be able to estimate that. You have a team that's dedicated to these. If you find that you can leverage that team and being able with kind of the same headcount to handle more problems, then you get more value out of it from the business sense. And I do believe that the demand for problems and analytics is going in the longer term, it's going to be way, way higher than our ability to build these models, even with agents. And so what I was pointing out before is that because I think that the demand is going to increase exponentially faster than our ability to deploy these models on the specific business problems, there is going to be still a role for humans. And what's going to happen is that people will do more with the tools that they have at hand. So.
Okay, so overall, I guess it is the velocity, but it's also the time reallocation scope here.
Yes, that's what unlocks the value, right? So you're going to be able, with same headcount, to unlock much more value, because the data scientist that was not really specialized in marketing can now do supply chain optimization, can maybe do some kind of like very sophisticated financial models for your like investment team to decide whether you want to buy an extra company. And before, you needed to ask a McKinsey to do something like this for you. So,
and forgive my just naivete, and it's well halfway through the discussion, and we're just bringing this up. What is the PyMC position at this moment in time as to what you're actually planning to do in the future? And I say this as well with the mind on when we think about PyMC, as far as I'm aware, being the most rigorously developed open source model, open source platform right now for MMM development. When you compare it to, say, Meridian and Robin and so forth, I don't know if I'm hearing anything about them doing agentic MMM solution design, but I am hearing about it from some of the closed door providers out there. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, where do you see the future of this going? And is this maybe more of like PyMC is going to have to take on more of a managed services capacity as you think about the use of the platform across the board, or just what does that look like? Are we now, is there a major divide between those two camps? Are all MMMs going to go agentic? I'd love to know what you're thinking there.
Yeah, I think you don't understand PyMC Labs if you don't think about a little bit about the DNA of the company and where it came from. And Thomas Vicky, who is the founder, fundamentally came from the open source community in the first place. And I think we are very much rooted into this. Of course, we are a business. We need to make money at some point. But we're also curious scientists who just want to like implement new stuff and also like be precursor where the future is going. And so from our side, we understand and we have this thesis that the role of data scientists is going to change in the future. And it's going to happen no matter what, whether we are involved or not. And so we want to have a stake into shaping it into certain directions, and directions that we think is effective for the community is going to empower data scientists in the longer term rather than relegate them into a side role. And so the way we focus on this is because we really believe it's going to solve a series of problems of data science at large, even beyond MMMs, that we wanna tackle. And so our position is in longer term is that we're gonna open source as much as we can of our stack. And also we think that in a world where building software is extremely cheap, I don't know how closed source MMM solutions are gonna be able to prevail. And meaning if you have all the components out and you have somebody that can put them together relatively quickly, and all the components are open source, well, how can you justify closed source platforms? I personally don't see it. But what you can justify is the expertise of the data scientists, both to act as advisor to tell you, hey, you need this solution. That's the ROI it can generate for your company. And then, hey, let's put it together so that you have this proprietary IP, customize it to your business, and that allows you to capture the value you need to capture. And so our position is a consulting advisory strategy in this area, rather than deploying our like a SaaS platform for MMMs.
That's sorry, Jim, you go.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say, and that's one of the things that I absolutely love about PyMC Labs. Coming from that open source community, I'm a bit of an open source junkie myself. And so like, I know, is it Decision Lab? Is that the first part? So we've talked a lot so far about using LLMs and agents to help with the building of the models, right? And that's Decision Lab that's been open sourced. Is that right?
Yeah, so Decision Lab is the building of the model builder. So that's the component that has been open source. So PyMC Labs is the consulting company built around the PyMC ecosystem, but we started to build this brand also called Decision AI. The entire field of using agentic data science, we call it Decision AI. And as part of these, we built several open source stack. One is called Decision Hub, which is an agent skill repo open source. Then we have Decision Lab, which is the agent builder, the agent scientists, and Decision Lens, which is this interactive agentic dashboard. And the reason we do that is also to let's say, have a clear positioning also with our community of PyMC developers. So I do think the idea of Bayesian modeling, it's core to the PyMC Labs ecosystem, and we don't want to abandon that. In fact, there is people that comes to us and say, look, guys, but I'm not interested in this AI stuff. And it's completely fine if you're not interested into this. The way we're gonna brand that is branding it towards this Decision AI stack to really differentiate people that are interested into combining agents with traditional models and people who are just interested into using traditional models in the way you used to do it before, which is, it's a totally defensible position too.
Yeah, and Decision Lens is something that's really interesting. I know that's not kind of fully been
open source yet.
But Simon, I was on a webinar last week with Luca, and they were showing the Decision Lens part of the stack, which is basically, okay, you've built the model, it's a good model, it's got good fit, it's validated, out of sample forecast is good, all that good stuff. But then the problem is always the bottleneck of, okay, you spend, a week preparing some slides and recommendations, and you have your 72-page slide deck that you present to the CMO and the head of marketing, and then nothing happens, right? Because they're like, oh, that's nice. Or maybe they're interested and they ask a bunch of follow-up questions, and then the data science team goes back and they spend a week or 2 or 3 or 4 trying to get answers to those questions because they're very thorough and rigorous. And by the time they get the answers, it's too late. And so Decision Lens is basically the agent, right? The LLM on top of the model. So now the head of marketing, the manager of marketing, the CMO can basically just talk to the model and say, hey, I was thinking about increasing spend in this channel. What do you think about that? Or, hey, why are you saying spend more in Facebook when the ROI is this and not this other channel that has a better ROI? And then it'll looks at the diminishing return curves. And
Mhm.
it's basically like, yeah, it's chatting with the model. And I have to say, Luca, the webinar, the live demo that they gave was amazing. It was like peeking into the future. It was really nice.
And so the one thing I'm thinking about here though is in conjunction with this, there's also a movement within the world of paid media buying toward agentic management concepts. And of course, Mark Zuckerberg about a year ago now came out and was like, just give us your credit card. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think there are still weights and biases and balance, and guardrails that need to be enforced and that'll be utilized. But do you see a future world where the outputs of an MMM and it run in this capacity with an agent that can provide the context as to why and the follow-ups would just be agent to agent interaction level and be just a component of the agentic buying mechanism and not necessarily observed by humans the majority of the time?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, we really very much think that then the next step to unblock decision science at scale is to actually action on those recommendations and insights. And I do see that the last component of an agentic MMM stack in the longer term is the ability to buy and to modify the campaigns that are running live or launch new campaigns in real time using agents. And we have actually a prototype of these concepts for some of our clients. We do have an agent. We have a Discord community which is called Decision AI. So if you enter that Discord community, what you're going to find is that you're going to be greeted by our agents called Daemon. Daemon is our overall orchestrator. The thing that it does, it can interface with all our agents, including the builder of MMM models and the decision lens agents that gives insights on existing MMM models, and that can do and orchestrate work downstream. So it can tell, for example, Facebook, hey, diminish the budget on this set of campaigns. And so the bringing it all together, the insights with the actions, having a set of agents that can coordinate each other across multiple surfaces and have at the same time the entire context of your business, I think is going to be the differentiator. And as people become more and more comfortable with the entire stack and with these tools, they're going to want to give more and more agency to these systems.
Yeah, in a sense, it's funny because who were we talking to, Simon? Was it someone on the podcast just recently that was basically making the analogy to like the stock exchange, like trading?
That's Henry Ennis from Meetnix.
Exactly. Yeah. So go back and listen to that episode. We'll put it in the show notes. But yeah, it's like the stock exchange traders on NYSE have been doing this programmatically for decades. I can't wait until someone's agent decides to spend like $1 million in a day on Facebook, and they're like, "Wait a minute, whoops."
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've said it tongue in cheek at a couple conferences, but this idea of agentic insurance, I think, is a very real cottage industry that we will see rise up at this moment in time because agents are going to do things and just like Waymo, Waymo's an interesting one because they have this combination of this deterministic signal through the LiDAR as well as AI utility in terms of interpretability. But there are considerations there as to the insurance model that is used and the number of times a human messes up versus a vehicle. And I look at this in a similar capacity. Like there's this world where we have very little tolerance for agents messing up, and if they are going to mess up at that scale. By the way, for what it's worth, I think the thing with the stock exchange one, I was thinking about that a lot more. I was like, yeah, it's kind of true, but the thing is the financial system itself isn't changing the rules of how dollars are processed, right? The idea here, though, is that Meta is changing the rules because they're changing their algorithm on an ongoing basis. So it's really hard to have that degree of confidence of just because something has worked historically, just because you've seen the same curve before, doesn't mean that you'll see the same results if you invest up to the level that you think that you're very confident in. But that's no one will ever solve that. It's a sort of a single dimension problem that we have. Not having another dimension where we can test all these things in a different version of Facebook that will then work in our one. Anyway, I'm getting way too tinfoil hat.
No, and what you're saying, I believe, I really believe there is going to be always like misaligned incentives between advertiser and publishers.
Yeah.
It's the nature of the market. And of course, you don't want to give the publishers even the walled gardens, the ability to do measurements. You don't want to outsource that completely, although
Right.
they maybe want to provide you some things.
It's the last bastion of control we really have, is to moderate the measurement signal they get so they know how hard they should be pushing. Otherwise, they're just left to their own devices.
That's right. And, of course, in the affiliate markets, there is platform that do a third party neutral that do the measurements exactly for that. It's kind of the extreme case. But in every other media and publishing channel, there is always this misaligned incentives.
Yeah. Gosh. So I'm going to just take us way into the future. There was a paper published, what was it, Jim, 2 years ago? NNN, do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
The next generation neural nets. I don't know, Luca, if you're familiar with that paper.
Very familiar.
Okay. Is that where we're headed? Is that a reality as we move into this? Well, no.
No, but I do think we are adding in slightly 10 to 20 degrees angle compared to that. So that paper really showed that you can use neural networks to train MMMs. And actually what they really did, what they showed that they have advantages on, and it's really good, is that first, you can use neural network to represent causal structure in the data, and they have a way of extracting that. Actually, there is a couple of follow-up papers exactly on that topic. And then the other one is that you can use heterogeneous data sets, like creative, for example, embedding them into the MMM, which is very hard to do today with traditional Bayesian models. And so I do think that that's going to stay. I don't think that classes of models from that paper is going to be the classes of models that's going to be in the longer term used. I do think that there is yet another direction of research, maybe 20 degrees angle, which goes in the direction of foundational models for MMMs. That's going to start to appear in the longer terms. And the way that they work is that today, building MMMs is still freaking hard. You can use agents, but you have all the it's still like a very computationally hard problem, and you need to refit your models every now and then on new data sets. While the concept of these foundational models are neural networks that are built on very, very large data sets. Some of these are entirely synthetic. They are not data sets that are like of advertisers, and they're trained into a way that when you have the next data sets and you want to apply it, you don't need to retrain the model. You just literally just apply it to your data, and it gives you the most plausible causal structure that represents your data and gives the same results of an MMM without you having to do anything but just write a single line. And that's amazing because it's going to really kill the barrier to entry for the entire media mix model industry and change the media mix model industry. Now, these foundational models exist in really a lot of industry nowadays. Like if you're looking at time series forecasting, you have things like Chronos from Amazon or Chat, it's called Time GPT from Nixla. So there is a series of very well-established foundational models for time series. There is virtually no reason why somebody was not going to figure it out, a way to do it for MMMs, beside the fact that, somebody has to do the research. So
maybe an angel will do it. Who knows?
I mean, we are already working on this.
Yeah.
So.
I guess that's the big question is like, will someone have to do it, or will agents start to figure it out? And I hear about Anthropic talking about this idea of, well, it's about 2 years until we see agents or the ability to sort of self-iterate. And I guess, do you see that happening in our space?
We have agents actually working on this problem exactly as we speak. So
I need to crack the whip on my agent. He's just he's over here doing nothing.
Yeah,
because I haven't given him access to anything. I'm still nervous.
Yes, the agentic difference chasm is a big one.
Yeah. Well, I hate to be the person to end the party, turn the lights on, turn the music off, but we have to start wrapping up. This has been a great. We could keep talking about this for a lot. In fact, we didn't even cover like half of our outline, our show notes of things that we wanted to talk to. But I guess we kind of went rose-colored glasses at the end, is there like one thing that you would tell people to beware of if they're getting into this whole agentic MMM world? Like one key tip of like, watch out for this because we've been there and done this, and it's going to be a problem.
Beware of. I don't know. I think like I think I and want to scare people or beware of. What I would like to tell them is something like just try, break stuff. If it doesn't work, try to understand how the system works. If you haven't used AI in your world life, if you wanna, for example, I went through the exercise of setting up my OpenClaw recently, and my assistant Harry helps me with a million things. And I was very scared at the beginning of giving access to all my digital life, but then I thought it through, and I found a way to do it in at the level I feel comfortable with. So it doesn't have access to my personal email or to my work email. It has its own email set up that it can use, and I communicate only through certain channels to it. So find a way that you can experiment with these tools in a way that feel comfortable to you, and tinker with it. Because what's gonna distinguish people that thrive in the world with AI with people they don't, it's the amount of repetitions they get with these new technologies and the ability to understand where these new technologies are going very, very early. So try. That's what I would want to say to people. And by the way, we have an agentic data science course if you're interested in too. You can find it on our website. It's a good way to get started if you want.
Absolutely. And Luca, we do like to end our podcast with an incremental insight. I think you might have mentioned this earlier, but if you want to go ahead and give a shout out to the Discord community again, if that's your...
Oh, for sure. Sorry, there is a Discord channel, a Discord server which we call Decision AI. It's fun if you wanna get there. There's a lot of people interested in the topic of agentic data science. They're exchanging messages, topics continuously. You get support around our software also. If you can ask questions around our software stack and open source ecosystem. So welcome everyone to join. As soon as you join, you're gonna meet Daemon, which is our own version of OpenClaw. We're gonna open source it also very soon. It's a re-implementation, rethinking of OpenClaw. It has some advantages compared to OpenClaw that we're gonna highlight. So I guess we're gonna link it into the podcast. Everyone is welcome.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Link to the show notes, as they say.
Indeed. And if you're into traditional forum spaces like I am, I will also note that the discourse.pymc.io has also some just really great forum discussions around some of these topics where not that they're unstructured in discourse, but it can be a high velocity of people chiming in and so forth versus more of the traditional read through like a story type of approach and I've seen some really interesting conversations on there of late around things like agentic management. But just as we're going through today's conversation, as I've been thinking, and I know there's such an interesting divide in the world right now of the folks who are really leaning in and wanting to embrace AI and those who have a degree of aversion. I think I saw a study recently saying at Google looks like John Deere, apparently, in terms of the employees there who are utilizing AI, which I thought, hey, good for John Deere. But it is this interesting moment in time where it was, 20 to 25% of the organization. You invented the transformer. How do you not see greater adoption? I think there is a very real degree of aversion. If your aversion to agentic data science is a fear that it might take your job, well, then maybe it's time to reevaluate what is your job in the future and begin to measure up.